Hey, well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm sure you can tell this is being recorded, so just a FYI. If you need the bathrooms, they are down the hall by the piano. You have some note cards that were provided at the front table, so we're gonna do our best to stay on track with time and save the questions for the end. So don't forget your questions. You can write them down if you need to. Okay, so housekeeping is out of the way. I'm just curious, out of curiosity, how many people here consider themselves like brand new to using native plants? I am starting from scratch. Okay. And how about intermediate? Like I think I know some things. I'm okay, but I'm wanting to hear from the experts. And how many people would consider themselves an expert or very knowledgeable? Okay. Yeah, thanks so much. Okay, and so I'm joined here by Jordan. He's representing the Lucky Mute Watershed Council, and they have been really instrumental in getting this workshop together today. So I'll just let Jordan talk a minute about the LWC if you're not familiar.
Yeah, so good morning, everybody. I think a lot of you are LWC volunteers or friends of some sort, but I definitely see some new faces maybe affiliated with Polk more. Recently, I had an opportunity to be out on a landowner's property and down in Kings Valley just on Friday, yesterday, and he said, I've never even heard of you. I've heard of the Soil and Water Conservation Districts, but I've never heard of the watershed councils. What is a watershed council? So I thought, yeah, definitely want to make the opportunity here to say, if you have never heard of us, Lucky Mute Watershed Council, we are a 501c3 nonprofit located right here in Independence. We are over on D Street. And so we engage and participate with landowners, communities, and citizens of the Lucky Mute watershed and the Ash Creek watershed. So anyone there, so what we do is we engage and participate in the active and voluntary, key is there is the voluntary restoration of the Ash Creek and Lucky Mute watersheds. This can be either projects with vegetation, restoring stream habitat, and providing education to the community about watershed health so we look forward to you guys enjoying the presentation today and hopefully joining us for more presentations in the future, or if you have a project that you're ever interested in, we would love to hear about it, and so you can contact us or stop by over at 165 D Street, just about 3 blocks away. So welcome and enjoy.
Thank you. Okay. A little bit about the Polk Soil and Water Conservation District. So we serve all of Polk County. We are a special district, like a fire district or a school district. We have a tax base. So if you own property in Polk County, you are paying for events and education and providing the funding for technical assistance to help people manage natural resources like soil and water, wildlife habitat on their properties. So we work with farmers, people with properties that are forested, and the community. So thank you so much for being here. I manage our native plant sale, and felt like I wanted to do more on the education side with native plants. And apart from my work and in my own personal life at home, I've gotten really invested in taking out ornamentals every year and replacing them with natives, and taking out lawn and making more garden space. And I had met Izzy at our native plant sale, and Jessica had reached out about volunteering with us. And they both work in native plant landscape design, and I thought this is the perfect opportunity to bring them together and you here. So I am going to turn it over to them.
Thank you for having us, and I'm Jessica Wright, and I am a habitat garden designer and offer garden maintenance and also consultation or coaching for people who are wanting to install or design their own gardens and just want some help with that. A love of art and nature and gardening led me to pursue a degree in horticultural landscape design, and I began my business Earth and Spirit in 2018 in Santa Clara Valley in California, and have just been really inspired by native plants. I developed the business because I wanted to be able to start designing gardens for people, and after learning the impact that they have. And anyhow, I moved up to Oregon in 2024 last year, and I've been on a mission to get very acquainted with the people and plants of the area, and very glad to meet these nice people that are alongside me today. And yeah, really happy to see the excitement about conservation in the area, and thanks for being here.
All right, yeah, thanks for coming, everyone. I'm Izzy Mason, and I'm the owner of Purposeful Landscapes. I didn't really have as much of a straightforward introduction into native plants and horticulture. I graduated from Oregon State in 2018, and I have a degree in urban forestry. So right after graduation, I was working as an arborist, and I did that for about 5 years. And that's kind of when I started really being more interested in the planting and restoring areas after you remove a tree. And when I moved into my first home, you can see here, it was all lawn, and so I converted almost the entire thing into planting space, focusing a lot on edible gardening. And then with doing that, I fell in love with looking at bees, and so I was trying to get the best habitat for those things, and I learned, self-taught myself more about native plants, and that's kind of where my idea for my company started. So I started Purposeful Landscapes, and really focusing on natural and native landscapes. And I still love incorporating edible things into people's gardens as well, because that's just fun. And there's a lot of edible native plants as well that you'll learn about. So jumping right into it, here are some of our goals for the workshop. We really want you to be able to understand what naturescaping is, and the benefits of planting native landscapes. Recognizing your garden site characteristics is also something that we want you guys to be able to do. Learning how to prepare a site and actually develop a garden and establish one in your own landscape. Becoming familiar with native plants for different site conditions, so that you can choose the right plant for the right place. Seeing an example of a garden design process and kind of how we walked through designing a landscape, and then obviously feeling inspired and wanting to take on your own naturescaping project.
So what is naturescaping? Naturescaping is landscaping that has follows nature's lead and is using native plants at the heart of the designs and in doing so, you're creating pollinator and wildlife habitat. They are naturally low maintenance because we're letting plants go through their whole life cycles of flowering and seeding and letting the leaves remain. They are chemical-free spaces because we're inviting in wildlife because we appreciate and love it, and we want to make sure we are not endangering them once they're with us. Go ahead and move this along. So what is an Oregon native plant? It sounds like most of you are probably very aware of that, but we'll just go through it all. So a native plant would have evolved here for thousands of years. In the area, there are 9 ecoregions of Oregon, so there are some native plants that are very specific to certain regions, and some that travel throughout the whole space, and further north and further south. If you're not familiar yet, Oregon Flora is an excellent resource where you can put in your zip code and find plants for your area, and you can get really specific on your needs, and there's even examples of groups of plants that, plant communities that you can look at for planting a certain, a woodland garden or a rain garden or something of that nature. So that's a good resource. And why do we want to plant native gardens? The biggest thing that we're focusing on is just simply that they're the base of a healthy ecosystem and a healthy planet. Native plants are the base of the food web and are supporting everything that comes after. And native plants have a special connection with the insects and animals that have evolved with them. And so they can provide food in ways that exotic ornamentals just cannot. Well, thank you. There's the rest of that. On top of that, not having a lawn, like replacing your lawn with natives, I'm sure you guys know that we're reducing chemicals. We don't need fertilizers and pesticides, so people are trying to keep those green and healthy. Well, the native plants will just naturally be thriving in the conditions. And we're also reducing CO2 emissions without having mowing to do, and your water bill is definitely going to be going down because, again, the plants are suited for the rainfall of this area. Maybe we're establishing them with some additional irrigation, but the goal being that they could, over time, be on their own without additional water. So keystone plants, we know that native plants are important already, and keystone plants is just sort of like the superstars of the native plants that are particularly great host plants for moths and butterflies, and allow them or attract them to lay their eggs, and the caterpillars can utilize those plants to grow up. Just a little piece of information that I think really drives home the point. Maybe you're familiar with Doug Talamy, who is an entomologist from the University of Delaware, has done a lot of research. In fact, this information here, which I know is hard to see, but I hope we have this one on our resources for you too. But he found that one chickadee family fed their nest, their babies in the nest, 350 to 570 caterpillars a day. And that turns into like 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars in the time before they fledge. So that's a huge amount of food resources needed for one little family. And so it's just really makes you feel like, yeah, we need to plant natives. And of course, you know, habitat destruction is happening all the time as we're developing new lands, but it's in our power to be creating new habitat in our gardens, and can slowly connect those and create really, you know, great impact together.
Could you read a few of those plants?
Yes, I will. Yes, I'm sorry. So the top 30, this is not listed on the National Wildlife Federation page, which there is a link to it on our resources. But oaks, the native cherries, willows, the native crabapple, maples, huckleberries, wood pine, alder, those guys are all top hosts, and this is showing that oaks supply, or their host plant for 445 species, and that is including like you know, all oaks and all of the species they provide for, but I think just the Oregon white oak provides for over 100, like it's a host plant for over 100 different moths and butterflies. So it's a huge impact, again, compared to an ornamental tree like Chinese pistache, or I don't know, something.
Crepe myrtles people love.
Yeah.
They're,
which
have
are just
no hosts butterflies.
just
So.
not serving. So there's some great choices. Another, oh, I guess I'll just mention this. So 14% of native plants, which are the keystones, support 90% of butterfly and moth species. So it's, again, just kind of saying like, these guys are really important. Make sure to include some of them in your garden design. Another side of the keystone plants is providing for pollen specialist bee species. So bees, we have over 500 native bees in Oregon alone, and within the country, over 4,000 species of native bees, from very tiny to quite big. And, you know, honeybees have been like on the face of pollinator trouble, but there's all these native bees that we are needing to make sure that they have food, and they, many of them, the pollen specialists, have these really close connections with the plants that they've evolved with, and they can only eat the pollen, feed the pollen of certain plants to their young, and to get the nutrition that they need. And so great host plants for those guys include sunflowers, goldenrods, gumweed, asters, and let's see, yeah, and again the huckleberries, fleabane. So we'll show you some examples of keystones. A lot of the plants we're highlighting today are keystone plants, and yeah, this is just another point here. So 15 to 60% of the North American bee species are pollen specialists, and so they are requiring these plants to survive. Okay, let me get this one moving here. So this is just an image. This will also be in the resources that we're linking for you. This was done by OSU's Garden Ecology Lab, and they just wanted to prove how powerful some of the native plants are here for different bee species. So this is showing us the number of, like the diversity of bee species that the different plants provided. And we've got Phacelia, the Veryleaf Phacelia, Globegilia, Douglas aster, California poppy, Farewell to Spring Clarkia. And they're kind of comparing it up against lavender, which is a non-native, but something that we know as a good bee plant, but just showing like how much more impactful the Douglas aster would be. So just, yeah, like go natives. And this is just kind of reiterating that point, and we've got the same species here, also rose checker mallow, common madia, Canada goldenrod, Oregon sunshine, and yarrow. So these guys are all really high contributors. The outer circle represents the bee abundance, and the inner circle represents the diversity of bee species that visited. So again, Douglas Astor really wins an award there, and Globigilia, California poppy, you can see like the abundance and the diversity is really high. So a few other elements really important to include in your habitat garden. Leaving your leaf litter is a really important thing that you can do, not only protecting the soil and life below the surface, but also for overwintering moth and butterfly species. So that's a key first step. Water sources are just huge attractors for all wildlife, especially birds, but you'll find everybody coming to visit, depending, there's different, types of bird or water sources. You can provide decaying logs as another great source for microbe life and other small creatures. And rocks, for just having a pile of rocks can attract lizards and snakes and other creatures, but another important home and good for wildlife. Okay, on to Izzy.
All right. So, what are some site characteristics that you guys want to look out for in your own landscape? Soil is a really important one. You can do a quick soil test by just rubbing some moist soil in your hands. The grittier it is, the more sand content it has. If it's smooth, it has a little bit more clay. But this is kind of the basis. Soil is really important when establishing your garden. Water is another very important element. Making sure you take note of where water pools in your area, how water is coming in and out of your designated area. Those are things to take into account. Doing a quick infiltration rate test. It kind of tells you if your soil is naturally drier or wetter, and you can look those up as well. All right, next. Sun is an important factor. So whether or not you're facing the south side in your location or the north side will depend on how much sun you get throughout the day. One thing I want to note on this is part shade is something that is really indicating morning sun, so a less harsher, not quite an afternoon sun. So that's kind of important when looking at plant selection. Existing vegetation, whether or not you already have trees in the area you want to plant, this can impact if you want to excavate. That might not be a great area to dig with root zones. Maybe you want to take out some non-native trees and replace them with native ones. Best practice is always, to keep as much of the existing landscape as you can, just because you can't plant a 30-year-old tree. It's kind of difficult. So, kind of what Morgan said in the beginning, incorporating natives within your non-native landscape, and then succession, taking out ones here and there as the native landscape fills in. So hardscape, where are there pavers or maybe a driveway? Those are things to take note of. Where are there going to be areas in your landscape that you want gathering places or you want to be able to walk through? Recommend using a permeable surface for creating a hardscape, just so that you prevent water pooling in areas you don't want or excessive runoff. So those could include pavers, gravel, maybe some river rock, depending on what your design is. We have gravel in here. This is a rain garden I created, but she also wanted some river rock along here to help with drainage and also for her pathway. And now it doesn't flood in there as much, which is nice. Irrigation is really important for establishing plants, but for native plants, it's recommended 3 years of irrigation until they've been established, and then you can stop with your irrigation. It's actually more hurtful if you over-irrigate with a lot of our natives, so they have been adapted to handle the climate. Some species actually will handle no irrigation. They might grow a little slower, but if you have an area that's more shaded or gets protected a little more during the summer months, that might be an option. Elevation and slope. Are you planting on a hillside? Are you going to have a planting above your house? Does water drain down and cause an issue? Do you have erosion control? Those are just some things to think about. And then lastly, predation. That's important. I have my chickens up there because they're, not what you think of when you think of predators, but for baby plants, they can be a little bit of predators for establishing. Other things might include deer you have in your area, or rabbits. So thinking about how you're going to put in maybe temporary fencing or permanent fencing in areas to let those plants get established. They also dig things up. So they're great with established plants, but maybe not when you're starting out. So at this point, you would want to design your garden, but we're going to talk about garden design a little later in this section. So let's just imagine we've already designed our landscape. What do we do next? How do we install? The first steps to preparing a site is you want to remove grass. So there's a couple methods I recommend for taking out grass or weeds. This is a picture of a client's place. It was all ivy. So we used a lot of layering techniques in here. One way you can do it is a no-dig method. So you can layer a thick layer of cardboard or any paper material that's untreated, and then maybe grass cuttings, or you can layer with wood chips and kind of slowly kill whatever is underneath, especially if you don't want to manually dig everything out. Sod cutting is another way. You can rent a sod cutter and take out a huge area of grass if you want, or you can manually dig. Solarization is a fun one. This can be done in the summer when there's not much to do for planting or anything. So if you have a designated area that's grass and weeds, you can lay down a clear plastic tarp and secure it on each end, and it creates kind of a greenhouse effect on the area, and in our hot summer heat, it will zap a lot of and help you out a little bit. Next, you're going to want to test the soil. So we talked a little bit about how you would go about doing that just real quickly, doing a soil texture test. You can also buy a soil testing kit at a local garden store. You also can do an infiltration test to kind of see whether or not your soil is a wetter soil, a more moist soil, or a dry soil, and that will help you when deciding what plants to plant. Amendments, so this for native plants would only be really necessary if your area is super compacted, it lacks a lot of organic matter, it's just a tough area to get things started, and you'd want to amend when you're planting. So some amendments I recommend are animal compost, leaf compost, doing a mint compost, and just helping add organic matter to the soil and kind of breaking up, especially our hard clay soils that we usually have around here. Then we will plant. So we linked a bunch of local nurseries down at our resource page at the end of this. Just a note on that, some native nurseries are wholesale only, so making sure you call beforehand to make sure that you can even purchase the plants, but a lot of them are also appointment only, so just calling to be safe. Polk County is having their plant sale, and I know that pre-ordering those plants will be up soon, and you'll be able to pick out some natives that you like from that. All right, so after planting, I recommend using a natural weed barrier. So this is something like cardboard or maybe newspaper, untreated paper product. I'll talk a little bit about why I recommend natural weed barrier later on. Mulching is a very important part, especially here. It's really hot in the summer, and the mulch can really help keep moisture in the soil, and it suppresses weeds, and it also breaks down and becomes a good amendment, a natural amendment to your soil. Some things you can use, arborist chips are what I like to use here, because I usually can get them dumped for free at clients' places and at my own place. So I encourage that. It has a mixed media. It's a nice mulch. You can also use leaf cuttings or fallen leaves. You probably want to layer those a little thicker because leaves do break down quickly. And then grass cutting, I know people have used. Just make sure the grass hasn't gone to seed. And then water. So for all of our natives, we recommend watering for establishment. But if you're planting the right plant in the right place, that should be all the water it needs. About 3 years, I recommend, depending on your soil type. If you have a wetter soil, you might need less years to establish. And if you're planting very drought tolerant plants, yeah, could be a year before establishment. This particular place, we decided that the client didn't want to irrigate. It was too far away from her spigot. It was, she had some mobility issues. So we had some cover from 2 large maple trees, and so it's tucked in a little shadier area. It has a thick layer of mulch, and so this area I have not irrigated. I haven't put a single drop of water on it, and it's doing great. They're a little slower to get established, but they're surviving, and in the summer months they look a little dry, but I mean, you can walk our streams down to here, and so does everything, but they can take it. So less frequent watering is recommended, and so like once a week, I would say, but doing deep watering sessions. So doing it for an hour, really soaking the area. And then if you have newly planted stuff in a full sun location and the temperatures are above 90 degrees, I would say best practice to help them out, water a little bit more. Okay. So here are some pictures. I don't know if you guys can see super well, but these are some pictures I took from a couple of my clients' places. Over in the left-hand corner is kind of an example of why I would use a natural weed barrier. So you can see that she had down over there landscape cloth or plastic sheeting, and then she put a bark mulch on top of that. It actually is a great way to kill your soil, and you can see that it's gotten dark gray over there. It was preventing water from penetrating. It was preventing from those important microorganisms from breaking up the soil and creating a nice top layer of soil. I've also, it prevents oxygen from coming into the soil, so that's why it has that really gray tinge. And when you dig in there, you can see that there's no living things in there. There's no worms. There's nothing that is able to live in those conditions. It also can cause dangerous situations. I've experienced it spread out through a whole yard, and it causes water to concentrate in low spots and can cause sinkholes and cavities, and it actually has uprooted some large trees because of creating these thick cavities. So having something that can release water into your soil, having something that naturally breaks down. So just be aware of that. Even if it says it's decomposable plastic, they're lying to you. It's not. Use cardboard, it's free. Here is a client's place where she had an issue with water pooling close to her foundation, actually her house, and I noticed it when I was back there in the winter, and we decided that we'd install a rain garden. So rain gardens are really important for diverting water away from an area that you don't want it, and letting the water slowly percolate through the soil and create a basin during large rains. It usually doesn't fill up to the backflow area, but we do have, if it does get above this rim, it will flow out to the street. But right now, even with really heavy rains, it doesn't even get to that point. So that's a great option for wetter areas. It also creates great habitat for water-loving plants and animals. So over here is kind of a picture of the arborist trips, what they look like. They are a great mixed media, like I was saying. They compose of wood, leaves, and bark, and so it is a great thing to help with soil moisture. It will suppress weeds, but it also breaks down. They have some wood breaks down slower, the leaves break down a little more quick, so it's a great compost, a natural compost, to add to your soil. I would not recommend bark mulch. This is just mulch that has been, the trees that have been stripped of their bark and just chopped up. So it's literally just the bark of the tree. That doesn't supply any nutrients really to the soil. It also doesn't have the same capabilities that wood does of holding moisture. So in the summer months, you might see that it blows away easily. It doesn't retain a lot of moisture into your soil, and some bark mulches even artificially dyed. And so we don't want that leaching into the soil. That wouldn't be good for our plants. Here's an example of a drip irrigation system. This is a great option for areas that are a little bit more out of reach, or maybe you're like this client isn't at this home year round, so you can be put on a timer. It's very easy to use. It's concentrated where the water is going, so it's really hard to overwater in that area. And it's also above ground. There's no digging and finding sprinkler heads. It's a lot easier for a homeowner to set up themselves, and you can easily remove it once you're done and the plants have been established. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so timing. When should you start planting and prepping your garden? So site prep can really happen at any time, but if you're gonna do a no-dig method and kind of lasagna gardening type, it's probably best to do in the summer or the winter months when you're not competing with grass growing. This will help smother the area quicker. Obviously solarization is best done in the summer months. It doesn't really work well in the winter, but the summer it works very quickly within a few weeks, sometimes in really hot locations. Fall and spring are probably the best times to sod cut. It's easiest to work the soil, and I don't think the sod can't really, sod cutter, if you're renting one of those, they won't really cut if it's too dry or too wet conditions. For planting, our native plants want to be planted in the fall and winter. So this is during their dormant season when all the deciduous plants have no leaves on them and they're focused solely on root growth and development, getting ready for the hot summer months, getting ready to have those established roots so that they can hold the most water and survive through our longest drought period. And then also an important thing to note is if you're planting seeds, a lot of our native seeds need a period of cold stratification. So if you want flowers this season, it's important to plant in fall or winter so that they can have that long period of freezing and thawing in order to germinate. And since we've been having kind of, this past winter was a little drier, and fall, just making sure that those seeds don't dry out when you're planting them. So checking on them if we haven't had large rain events or if the soil isn't consistently wet. Mulching is another one that can be done any time of the year, especially if you're trying to break up all of this work. If you're doing it yourself and it's summertime and you're like, what can I do? And are getting anxious. I know people are like, I want to just do something now. I want to plant. You can mulch. You can designate an area, maybe use solarization, put down cardboard, put down chips. It will suppress weeds. Don't water the area. Just let it sit through the hot months, and then it will be ready to go when it's planting time. I would say the best time to mulch is right after planting. It looks the best, and then you keep a nice layer on top when you're going into hotter months to help with moisture control. And it's always good practice to put an extra layer of mulch down in the summer. Even if you plant in the fall, you're like, I think it's fine. An extra layer won't hurt. Just making sure that you're keeping it away from the trunk of the trees or the shrubs. About 6 inches is standard.
Okay, so getting to know some native plants, we wanted to go over some Willamette Valley native plants today with you, and there's also a booklet that will be available for you guys, which is a really awesome resource and kind of goes over most, I think, of the things we'll talk about, so you don't have to worry about getting, sizes and sun and shade all written down. It's a very nice resource. And also most of the plants I think that we have, that we're sharing today, are all on the Polk soil water plant list for their fall sale, so you can find them there. And we also have focused on some, keystone species that are really extra helpful in the garden. We're going to break it into 2 sets of plants. The first I'll talk about, which for drier sites, but generally, it's just not sites that have standing water over winter. So Izzy's going to talk about some plants that can handle kind of moister soil conditions during, even standing water conditions. So I'll go ahead and move through some of these, and just again about right plant, right place, making sure that we are really trying to follow what we know the plant needs and not putting something that needs sun in the shade and giving it more water than it needs. You'll have the most success if you are putting it where it is happy to live. So for drier sites, the plants that we'll be talking about might be coming from oak woodlands or savannas, upland prairies and dry meadows, from dry brushy slopes, or rocky outcrops. So, and some of the habitat that they are providing for just a whole set of insects, pollinators, birds of prey, reptiles, mammals. These plants provide for a lot. So starting with some large trees, the very iconic Oregon white oak and Douglas fir, this being the state tree, and Oregon white oak being pretty much the top host plant in the region. Large trees add so much value to a garden, habitat-wise and for your own enjoyment. It is important to make sure you do have the space for them, and making sure they are, you know, safe distances from foundations and fence lines so neighbors aren't getting upset with it, or utility lines. But if you do have some space for one, this is a great place to start your habitat garden. And let's see, so Oregon white oak, generally getting to 50 to 60 feet tall, can get taller. When it's in a stand, they're growing more kind of straight and upright. On their own, they will kind of have more of the gnarled shape and grow as wide as they are tall. That it's been found, I think on OSU I was reading, that on their extension pages, that the bird habitat within an oak woodland is shown to be much higher than even neighboring conifer forests, just with the acorns it's providing and hosting all of those insects. It's just a powerhouse. And it's great for exposed dry sites. It can really handle that. It actually can take some wetter soils too, but it is happiest in a drier, more exposed type situation. It doesn't really want to grow under shade. It can, but it's happier without. The Douglas fir is the second largest evergreen conifer in the world, and just under the coast redwood. And these and the incense cedar are going to provide a beautiful evergreen structure to the yard. This is going to be definitely quite tall, so kind of considering scale to your home and land. But these both could make nice screens between larger properties or windbreaks, plus so much habitat value. Douglas firs do provide soil with more organic matter. The incense cedar does get a rather large trunk, so kind of making space, for the trunk, and making sure that the understory has space is important. Sun or partial shade, and this will, if you're giving it deep and infrequent watering when it's young, it can develop really great drought tolerance, so good to keep in mind. I guess next slide. So some smaller trees and large shrubs. This top row is kind of like the over 10 feet, so this is our more like under 10 feet set. We have the western chokecherry and the blue elderberry, both of these providing so much flower, nectar, pollen resources, and they make berries that are well loved by wildlife. And the blue elderberry has a lot of medicinal qualities, which could be fun for making tinctures and things like that. The western mock orange is more just a beauty. It is produces so many gorgeous white and yellow flowers, and the scent is really lovely. And it's just a nice kind of small to, large shrub, small tree kind of shape. Ocean spray, it's known for its lovely cascading flowers and provides seed for birds over the winter, or fall and winter. That will be happy in part shade. It can kind of take, part shade to shade. Let's see, thimbleberry is a personal favorite. It has delicious, delicious berries. And I think planting some in your garden so you have access is a very good idea. They are well loved in nature too, and sometimes can be hard to find, but they can definitely spread, so making sure you're planning for that, and we'll be happy for them to spread because they will. They are very soft, pretty maple-like shaped leaves, and they'll give some fall color, and then buckbrush. So the Ceanothus genus is well known for being a great host plant again for butterflies and moths, and also bees just love the flowers. And this will give you some nice evergreen structure in the yard, as well as the evergreen huckleberry and tall Oregon grape. These three are all evergreen and can just provide you some nice structure over winter. If you haven't eaten huckleberries, I hope you will. And again, something to have a source in your own garden is, I think, the way to go. And soils here are, great for it. I've tried planting it down in the Santa Clara Valley, and it was happy in the Santa Cruz Mountains, but I'm very happy to now live where I can plant it in my own garden. And it has lovely little bell-shaped flowers that hummingbirds love in the spring. And then tall Oregon grape has its lovely yellow flowers, and it's a really important early source of nectar and pollen. And for mason bees, which are some of the earliest pollinators to come out, it provides food. So these guys, even these who are, deciduous, will still give you some woody structure in the yard when everything is sleeping. So next up is our small and medium-sized perennials. So these guys that we have here are all between like 1 and 4 feet. They're all important host plants as well, and great for bees and butterflies. These are all deciduous, so it's good to keep that in mind when you're planning the garden, and again, kind of keeping some structured woody shrubs or evergreens around them, so it's just not totally blank through part of the year is important. Using maybe bunch grasses in between can also be a good way to keep some life above ground over winter. The Western Columbine is great for part shade or shade environment, delicate foliage and gorgeous flowers hummingbirds enjoy. Oregon Sunshine is a great one for kind of more exposed sunny sites. It has a unique gray-green foliage and really bright flowers that it's just a lovely plant that can really take the heat. And showy fleabane has pretty large purple yellow flowers that cover it, and it kind of makes a nice carpet. Also good for sunny kind of drought conditions. And the rose checker mallow has some nice green foliage that comes back early in the year and provides really nice flower stalks from shorter to taller. But they're very important, as we saw, for bee species, and we've got Curly Everlasting, which is got these sweet white and yellow flowers that kind of dry and kind of have like a straw flower kind of feel to them. They stay on the plant for a long time, so way beyond their bloom time, they're giving some kind of interest. They are a later bloomer from summer into fall, so that's a nice aspect to kind of push the bloom season, which we definitely want to try and do as much as we can from early to late. Showy milkweed is another very important plant, as we've heard, for milkweeds for monarchs. They've become quite famous, but they're really interesting as far as texture. They have like a really large leaves and kind of gray-green, and the flowers are really big and showy, as it mentions, and they can get fairly tall as well, and so they're kind of interesting mixed with more delicate wildflowers, because they're just really different looking. A lot of contrast with that. And the Canadian goldenrod, or Canada goldenrod, is another super important late bloomer, and it's got lovely yellow flowers, and that's another one. Well, some of these are, going to more freely seed, and so keeping that in mind, Canada goldenrod is going to expand, and so having that in mind where you're choosing it, that you want to invite it to spread and can enjoy that. If you limit the water that you're giving it, it's also not going to spread as fast. If you're watering it, it will definitely be glad to expand. Okay, so ground covers. These are all, again, awesome host plants. They're small but mighty. And the kinnikinnick, or bearberry, provides early sweet little flowers, again, hummingbirds enjoy, related to like the huckleberry family. And it does make a berry that animals enjoy, and actually are quite tasty, I think, too. They're edible. And it gives, an evergreen structure that's really a unique feature. I think there's not so many of that size that, of natives. I think it's really helpful. It could be a great lawn replacement type plant, growing like normally between 6 to 12 inches. Also a medicinal plant. Woodland strawberry. This one is deciduous, but it will make a really nice ground cover and spreads pretty quickly for part shade. And has lovely flowers and delicious fruit as well. So it's great, again, for humans that visit too. And let's see, and then the Oregon stonecrop. This one's great for kind of rockier, hot, exposed sites. Very petite, but making a really neat flower show of yellow flowers in the summer, and it will also be evergreen and give you some interest throughout the year, and spreads nicely. So.
All right, so let's talk for a little bit about wet spaces. So just going through some of the habitats you might have. Rain gardens, we talked a little bit about, but these are bermed, and they are meant to infiltrate water into the soil, specifically to receive water and then let it slowly penetrate in. They usually drain within 12 hours, so they're not a holding place for water. Swales are a method of slowing water down on a slope, so this could be a great option if you have a lot of elevation on your property. Wet spots are kind of what they sound like. They're a low spot that is pooling water in the wintertime. riparian areas are transition areas between an upperland and like a lowland or body of water, and so it comes together and creates wet areas. So this would be stream bank, floodplain, wetland, things like that. Ponds, those are land-based basins of water, and there's small, artificially made, or they can be natural as well, and they're meant to hold water and not infiltrate it into the soil. So some wildlife supported in these areas. We have birds, waterfowl, such as ducks, herons, some birds of prey that are fish specialists like osprey, you might see. Insects include bees, dragonflies, butterflies, mammals. We have reptiles and frogs and fish. Okay, so let's talk about large trees for wet areas. First of all, native trees, like we've been reiterating, are very important. They host many different species and are crucial for habitat creation in your yard. So if you have the space for a large tree, put in a large tree. If you take nothing away from this and you don't want to plant anything, just plant a large tree. I mean, you probably, I always tell people, like, if you plant a large tree, it takes a while to establish. It won't be your problem once it is a problem. But they provide shade. They're an awesome centerpiece for the yard. Some great ones for wet spots are red alder. These just look great clumped together, and their root systems are really robust, so they're great for bank stabilization. And you see them along the creek side a lot. They're also a huge host for many native butterfly species, so that was on one of the lists. The alders are really important for that. Next we got ponderosa pine. So the Willamette Valley has their own variety of ponderosa pine that is specifically adapted to this area. It can take the wet winters that the other ponderosas might not like and might rot out, but they'll take wet winter months. They do want to be dried out in the summer, so not standing water. And the great thing about pines is they're super drought tolerant. So if you plant one in your yard in a sunny spot at the right time, you will have to do little watering to get that established. Pines are also one of the most important host species in the Pacific Northwest, so that is just something to keep in mind. If you have a pine, you'll have increased wildlife in your yard. Quaking aspens, these are usually found in a little higher elevations, not so much in the valley. They like frequent disturbance, but I plant them here because I just love them, and they grow really fast. They have awesome fall color, and their buds are actually edible to birds, and so is their bark. So that is a great source. Since they're in the Populus genus, they are a huge host for many native moth species. Big leaf maple, this is just a great centerpiece tree to have in your yard. It wants a little bit more protection when getting established, so maybe not in a super full sun area, but eventually it'll create a lot of shade and it'll be a great centerpiece tree. They're not super tall, but they are still a large tree species, and their sap is edible, and so are their flowers. So if you need a snack when hiking, they have high protein because of the pollen, so that's a good option. Obviously animals like to eat them too, but their leaves are really important food for insects. Okay, so moving on to small trees and shrubs. These are really important hideaways for birds and small mammals. They provide, most of these that we're listing are going to be providing food for pollinators when they flower, but also food for birds with their berries. So they're a huge source of habitat. They can provide a visual barrier up against a fence or a natural hedgerow. So they're a great thing to incorporate in a landscape instead of maybe an arborvitae hedge. You plant a native hedge, and they'll provide food for humans as well. They also provide shade for small reptiles, and some songbirds won't even come to your yard if you don't have enough shrub layer and area where they can forage and hide from the birds of prey or other predators. So some ones I want to highlight: snowberry. This is just a great versatile shrub. It's cute little bellflowers the bumblebees love, and then its white fruit that it holds onto all winter are a great last resort for birds when they have not a lot to eat during those winter months. It's also has showy year-round appeal, so it's almost like an evergreen because it's such a beautiful plant throughout the season. Red twig dogwood or red osier dogwood. This is a great plant for really wet areas. It can be very saturated. It'll grow really quickly, so I love planting this in the landscape because you get that vertical appeal almost instantly. It can sprout out from its roots and also from lower branches, so like it would create a great hedgerow if you wanted something like that. It has this red winter color on its branches that is great. The berries are not edible to humans, but large, or they're pretty large, and they're a good source for birds. So western serviceberry. This one, in the spring, you'll see it has beautiful white blooms, and it's a smaller tree, and it'll take pretty diverse soil conditions, so it's great for all types, and will take wet winters and very drought tolerant in the summer. It wants to be a little protected, so morning sun best, afternoon shade. And then it's an important source for early emerging bees because it blooms very early in the season. And the berries are edible, and people make jam, and they're high in vitamin C, so it's an interesting one to have. They're very slow growing though, so like that's something to take into account when planting in a landscape. They won't give you that large vertical appeal very soon, so considering that. Schooler's willow, this is just one example of a native willow species. Willows in general are just huge host plants. They're very important to incorporate into the landscape. Most of our willows are very small shrub-like, so they're not as daunting as you might think of like a weeping willow. They're gonna be really great for wet areas, and they have deep root systems, so they will stabilize banks. They'll help with erosion control, and yeah, they have showy buds that hold on into the winter, so they have some winter appeal, and they're just a great one to have around. Pacific ninebark, this is a little taller of a shrub. It'll take it likes wet conditions. It doesn't want to be dried out as much. It will take shade and sun, and has great flowers for our native bees. They really like it, and then it gets its name because it has this like gnarly, peely bark on it, and so it's fun to look at in the winter, and it's a good ID feature. And so the evergreen shrub that I picked was silk tassel. This one you'll see mostly in like coastal regions, but it's a great evergreen plant. It is slow growing, and it doesn't want to be too wet in the summertime, but in a shady location, this would be an option. And it has evergreen foliage, so it's gonna provide that cover and greenery all year round. And then it's showy tassel-like flowers you can see here will come on sometimes as early as December, so it's a really good source of pollen for early hummingbirds and also for bumblebees and mason bees.
All right.
Okay, so some options for filling in your rain gardens, or this is good in a meadowscape, is to add some rushes and sedges. Most of our native rushes and sedges are evergreen, so they do create important aesthetics in the landscape, but they also will provide hideaways for winter fowl, and they'll invite more wildlife into your yard. These are just some I'll go through real quick, some of my favorites. So the common rush, this is a great clumping species that does well in wet areas, but can get dried out a little bit. And then they have these brown flowers that are really important for insects. And then the fruit that comes on later in autumn, the birds just feast on them, and it's really fun to watch that. Some sedges, these are both evergreen sedges, and those are great for filling in like a meadowscape where you have perennials that are only going to be up during those spring and summer months into the fall, and then they'll die back, and having some more greenery and also some seed heads will attract more autumn birds to your area, and also we'll have something to look out on in the winter. Okay, so ground covers and flowering plants. So these are really important for our native pollinators. They're also going to be the showy, pretty flowers that you want to see in your landscape. They provide lots of pollen for a diverse amount of species, but it's also a lot of their seed heads will provide food for birds in the winter, so it's important to leave those. They can also be, the stems of these flowers can be nests for native bees and hosts for butterflies, so keeping those on there is important. Yarrow is a great both ground cover and flowering plant, so you could mow it to the ground and have it as a walking path, or you can let it just go and it will produce these beautiful white and pink flowers. In the summertime, it has a bunch of different native small bees that really like the small petite flowers on them, and those are really fun to watch. It'll also take seasonally wet conditions, but can dry out in the summer, so it's a good versatile choice. Streambank lupin is a perennial that has a lifespan of 2 years, but it will reseed. It can get fairly tall and have these beautiful, delicate purple flowers, and you kind of find them on the rock edges of the coast, and they do good in wet areas in the valley. And they also, lupin in general, attracts many beneficial aphid-eating beetles, so ladybugs and other types of beetles, so it's nice to have in your garden. Fringe cup is a good one for shadier areas in wet spaces. They'll fill out to create a abundant ground cover if you just let them go in a shady, wet spot. They also have early blooms that the hummingbirds really like, so that's a great source for nectar for them. And then they also, I was reading up on them, they're great for erosion control. So if you're needing that on the stream bank or something, these would be a good option. Wapato, this is an exciting one I saw on the plant list this year. This is a water plant, and it is a great one for ponds or for areas that are going to be wet year-round. It also will take stream banks, so it can not be fully saturated year-round, but that's kind of what it prefers. It has gorgeous white flowers that the pollinators just love, and then the tubers on them, on the rhizomes, are actually edible. So like 15 plus species of waterfowl will eat them and depend on them as a food source, and they're also edible to humans, so they've been important first food for a lot of native people for some time. And they're kind of like a starchy tuber. And then Douglas aster we talked about, huge importance for pollination, diversity and abundance, and it's just a great staple for a little wetter soils. Once established, it will be pretty drought tolerant, but yeah, it wants a little bit more moisture, and it's just a great one for pollinators. It also is important for late season pollinators, so you might think like the honeybees, they're going to be done once it gets a little cooler. Well, a lot of our native bees hang around for longer periods. They can take more cold and they still need a food source. So Douglas aster is a great one because it will keep flowering until the frost, until those species are done feeding. Coastal strawberry, this is another native strawberry. This one is evergreen. It has more of that rubbery texture leaf, kind of like a classic strawberry you get at the nursery. They also have good strawberries, but I never get to them, and the squirrels and birds eat them before I can eat them. But they'll send out runners and fill an area within a few years. They're great for really tough spaces that you have trouble with planting other things, so poor soils or things that are filled with weeds. This is a great one to plant. It will suppress a lot of that and kind of create a nice thicket. Camas, I'm sure you guys know, this is a very famous plant for this area. It loves wet meadows, but will need to be dried out in the summer, so it will kind of go dormant and then will come back up in the early spring. But it has very early flowers, so it's important for hummingbirds and bees that are slowly emerging. And the bulbs are edible and have been used for many years as a sweetener when you bake it or in cakes, so it's an important first food as well. Douglas iris, this is my favorite iris. It's just beautiful and has purple and white flowers and just like a tinge of yellow, and these like full sun, but it can take some shade, and they're good in wetter soils and great for early pollinators. Yeah.
Right. Thanks for all of your attention too, as I know we have a lot of information to share. But we just thought we'd go through a little bit of the design process in case that's helpful for anyone wanting to embark on their own naturescaping process in their yard. Polk Soil Water Conservation District invited Izzy and I to design a pollinator garden that's going to be going in Dallas at a new park called Barnard Park, and it's going to be planted this October. And so yeah, it was a lovely opportunity to work together, and our goals for the project were habitats, as we have said so many times today, but just creating year-round food, shelter, nesting, and breeding sites for pollinators. So sometimes a pollinator garden is envisioned as, you know, a lot of nectar plants, but really the full sense of a pollinator garden is giving the whole life cycle of those creatures a place to live and grow their young. And so that would include all kinds of things from trees to shrubs to ground covers and some wildflowers and just like nature. We wanted to have all Willamette Valley native species. We were emphasizing keystone species to make sure we were really getting a lot of habitat. We wanted to source all of them from the plant sale that Polk Soil Water Conservation District is hosting. So and they have a really diverse, great set. So we hope you'll enjoy getting some for your yard too. And we wanted to make sure, again, the bloom times were staggered throughout the year, as early blooming as we could have and as late blooming as we could have with different species. Again, the layered plantings, so all levels, which helps for creatures moving between different spaces within the garden, and a naturalistic design style, so making sure, you know, it's organic and curved lines and, you know, maybe planting in groups of 3s or 5, odd numbers, so that it just feels natural when you're looking at it. So here is a picture of the before site. So this is on the Google Maps. The main park will be in this space, and then this will be the space for the pollinator garden, which is this area